What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbados Walker. I am your host, Andrew, and in this video we're going to be talking about the religions of Barbados, or according to the way I perceive them anyway. This is not based on any statistical facts or whatever, which I usually like to do for these videos, but this is just my personal experience. I'm going to be talking about them and how I have experienced them in Barbados specifically, but in the Caribbean region in general. I've talked to people from Jamaica, I've talked to people from Barbados, from St. Vincent, from St. Lucia, from Dominica, and so on and so forth. So this is sort of like a general understanding of religion in the Caribbean. But before we continue with that video, for those of you who are watching this video and paying very close attention to where I'm driving from, I'm actually starting from somewhere in Christchurch, and we're going to be driving. This video was taken on Sunday, and we're going to be driving all the way from this area to the church and then back. I did a little stop at Massey Whole Town, and I wanted to buy some stuff and then drive back home. That is what the video you're watching is. So if you don't know where any place is and you would like to know, oh, where exactly is this place, you can just tell me at what point in the video it is, and I will tell you what place I passed during that part of the video. Also, before we continue, I would like to congratulate us, the Barbados Walker community, for crossing 1,700 subscribers. At the rate that we are growing, should I say going or growing? Anyway, at the rate that we are progressing, there is a very high chance that if we keep up with this pace, we can exceed 2,000 subscribers before the end of 2025. That will be, you know what will be really amazing is if we can get 2026 subscribers before we enter the year 2026. That will just be the icing on the cake. Now, I said that I was going to be doing a video every single day, and my first plan was to actually do a video every single day. But given that Sunday is a day of rest, it is literally the one day in a week that I get to hang out with friends and family and stuff. Everybody is free. I decided that I wasn't going to do any commentary on Sundays, but I was just going to post a video for you guys to watch. But then I realized that if I'm posting a video for you guys to watch, then I'm encouraging you to do the thing that I don't want to do, which is spend time with family and friends. Now, all of you are very hardworking individuals, and at the end of the day, you have just a few minutes to an hour to relax, and this video is one of the best ways to do so, even though I do say so myself, because you get to experience the crazy ideas that flow through my head, and I get to read your comments in the comment section and reply to them whenever I'm free before the next video. But on Sundays, I want you guys to just dedicate that time. Go to church, spend time with family and friends. Actually, drop your phones, drop your laptops, turn off your TV, spend time with people, do a cookout, do some ribs, go to the beach. The beach is free. You don't need to cook anything to be at the beach. You go to the beach and swim. Learn how to swim if you don't know how to swim. Go for walks. Go to nice places. There are outdoor gyms in Barbados. Do some nice things with family and friends, because at the end of the day, no matter how much you work, no matter how much you dive into your phones and into your laptops and into entertainment, it's not going to replace real human connection, which is something that all of us need. And of course, there is the whole rest. You need to rest. Anyway, I was thinking about this video on Sunday, and I was saying my experience with religions is actually not the same that, like, when I'm thinking about religions, usually I'm thinking about just my personal life and my personal experience. But when I stop to think about in society in general, how does the Bayesian community or the Caribbean community view religion? And I see it as something very different from what you will see on paper, on statistics. Because statistically, Christianity is the dominant religion in the Caribbean. It's the dominant religion in Barbados. And specifically, Catholicism, Anglicanism, and Pentecostalism. So the Catholics, the Anglicans, and the Pentecostals. Christians are the dominant religious group in Barbados and in the Caribbean as a whole. However, when you look at your conversations with everyday Bajans and you look at your interaction with everyday people living in the Caribbean, you find out that Christianity is actually the 5th most dominant religion here. And I'm going to explain. Many people will be saying, which one is the most popular? But when I explain, you will get it. Now, the first one that I have is the political religion. That is the most dominant in the Caribbean. And let me explain. This is actually seasonal, which means you don't see this pop up all the time, except maybe once every 4 years or every 5 years, depending on which country you're in the Caribbean and when they do their election. But once every 5 years, you're going to see a lot of people whose entire way of life is being dictated by their political party, the party that they support or they belong to. If they're politically affiliated, the one they belong to, or if they're not politicians themselves, just the one they support. And it's serious to the point that I've seen people refuse to go to church. They refuse to go to church because many of the ministers at the church they attend support a different party from the one that they support. So ask me this question. If you're Christian, if you're truly Christian, and during elections, you refuse to go to church because your minister is supporting, let's say, the red party and you're supporting the yellow party, are you really Christian? Because now it appears that there is some belief system that is higher than where you place your Christianity. Because you're perfectly fine. These people that I'm talking about are perfectly fine for the whole year or the whole years, right? They go there, they participate. Maybe they're in the choir, maybe they're the ushers or whatever, whatever role that they play in that church. But during an election period, they don't attend church because the ministers or the other choir members or whoever supports a different political party. You will see this to the point, I thank God, before I continue, that the Caribbean isn't like maybe the United States or Mexico or Nigeria or South Africa, where people literally die during election, right? Election is very, very violent in many countries, including the United States. Very violent. People die, people lose their lives. It's fatal. It's a deadly period in the country, right? But Barbados isn't like that. Yes, you're going to get, I've seen people throw hands, like there are fights, there are insults, there are accusations, allegations, rumors. Everything comes out. But I have not experienced it get to the point where people are using deadly weapons on other people, right? It's usually just a very tense, very emotionally charged period in the country. And then after that period, everybody goes back to normal. I'm your friend, you're my friend, we're friends. Whoever has been elected has been elected. Oh, that's something else. In the Caribbean, after election done, right? People tend to understand, most people understand that the elected governor, the elected whoever is in charge, has been elected. And now the person is supposed to govern the country or the small parish or the small jurisdiction or wherever. They understand that in Barbados. But in many countries, even after election is completed, you still see that hostile trend continuing. People who lost the election or who supporting the political party that lost the election don't don't want to admit that a different party is now ruling. The people who won are still fighting against the people who lost. And this doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you're in PDP or ANPP, whether you're in Red Party or Yellow Party. It doesn't matter. I've seen this happen in very many countries. As a rule of thumb, if the country tends to be very violent during elections, to the point of deadly violence and violence with dangerous weapons and stuff like that, then that country is also going to have problems even after the election period. But to God be the glory, that is not the case in Barbados. However, it is the case that during elections, people's religions, people's morality, people's opinions of other people is significantly changed depending on what political party their opponent or their friend or their family member or whoever is supporting. And that is something I find very, very interesting, because if Christianity was the culture, if Christianity was the way of life, Christianity will be the highest moral guide. It will be the highest moral guide. And that is what will dictate how the person behaves in different settings and in different environments. But if Christianity can come down during election period, then is it really Christianity, or is Christianity just the convenient religion when there isn't a political election going on? Okay, what is the second one in the Caribbean? The second one is what I call Christian syncretism. Now, syncretism is when you combine religions, multiple religions, to come up with a unique, or maybe not so unique, a mixture of religions. Sometimes these people are called cafeteria Christians, because like a cafeteria, they pick and choose what they want from each religion, and they don't take the ones that they don't want, right? Cafeteria Christianity. So for example, in Africa, for example, or in South America, when somebody says he's a Christian, there are certain things that you can expect from the person. In general, of course, I'm doing broad generalizations. I'm not talking about every single individual in Africa or every single individual in South America. But broadly speaking, if somebody says he's a Christian, you can expect that on Sunday, the person will go to church, right? Once a week, the person is going to stand up, dress up, and go to church. You can expect that the person believes that the Bible is the Word of God. You can expect that from most people who call themselves Christians. You can expect, like, these are certain things. You can expect that the person believes that maybe, I don't know what, Jesus is the Son of God, for example. Like, there are general things that people believe or tend to believe when they are called Christians. And these things are things that you should be able to look up online. Like, if somebody says he's a Christian, what are the general broad, like, irrespective of denominations, what are the broad overarching beliefs that people are going to have? And I know that, okay, for example, Seventh-day Adventists will go to church on Saturday and not on Sunday. But at least once a week, right? You expect all Christians to go to church once a week, right? Whether it's on Saturday or Sunday, once a week. In Barbados, however, or in the Caribbean in general, it is possible to find multiple Christians, very many. I have met so many that will tell you that they are Christians and they don't think you need to go to church. They don't believe you should go to church, right? They believe church is not necessary in the practice of Christianity. Not Sunday church per se, that okay, maybe you're going on Saturday, or maybe you're going on Wednesday, or you're going on Tuesday. No, it's no church in general. And this is not how Christianity has been practiced at any point in time. This has never been a common practice in Christianity. it is actually not a Christian practice to not attend fellowship once a week. That is not a Christian practice. Wherever it came from, I don't know. You're going to find Christians who believe things that come from other religions. For example, you will hear Christians talking about karmic cycles, right? Let me say it the way that you will understand. Maybe you don't understand what I'm talking about. But you hear Christians talking about karma. Oh, his karma is going to come get him. Last I checked, and I have checked because I am currently doing formal studies on these matters in a university. But last I checked, Christianity doesn't have karmic cycles. Those things are in Hinduism or Buddhism, right? And some form of syncretism between those two religions, right? Not in Christianity, not anywhere in Christianity, but you'll find Christians who believe it and teach it. Now, believing one thing is different. Teaching it as something that is true from a Christian point of view, sometimes even from the pulpit in church. You will hear some pastors teaching karmic cycles. Now that is something I don't understand. That is not Christianity. That is some modification of Christianity, but you can't call it, no, come on, let's be serious. You can't call it Christianity at that point, right? You're mixing all the theologies and you're diluting everything. Okay? So there are so many things like these. And for example, this is another one. I've heard Christians tell me that nobody will go to hell. And they say it just plainly, like nobody will go to hell. God is all so loving and so kind and so merciful and so generous. And God cannot allow any one of his creatures to go to hell or to enter eternal damnation. And they're going to tell you like that. And I'm there sitting like, have you read your Bible? In the Bible, the person that talked about hell the most is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Nobody has talked about hell in the Bible more than Jesus. You can look it up. I have checked. I have studied it. So if you're talking about a loving God and all of those things, and what you believe is the word of God, and who you believe is the Son of God, tells you that this place is real and this is what is going to happen on the last day, and you telling me you don't believe it and you believe some other stuff based on some calculations or estimations that you made, are we still talking about the same religion? Right? So when I encounter people who say they are Christian in the Caribbean, right, I have no assumptions. Zero assumptions. Like if you meet somebody in Nigeria and the person tells you, I'm Christian, okay. There are so many assumptions that you can make, and 90% of the time you're going to be correct, right? If somebody tells you I go to this church or I am part of this particular denomination, 90% of the time you're going to be 100% correct about what they believe. In Barbados, however, or in the Caribbean in general, if somebody tells you you're Christian, everything is up for debate. Is the Bible the word of God? Up for debate. Do you believe in karmic cycles? Up for debate. Do you practice yoga? Up for debate. Do you believe in hell and heaven? Up for debate. Do you believe that angels are real and demons are real? Or are all these superstitious beliefs to you? Up for debate. Everything is up for debate. So I wouldn't put these people in the category of Christians. I will say that they are practicing a Christian syncretism, something that looks like 55% Christian and they call themselves Christian, but the remaining 45% is not Christian. All right, which brings me to number 3 and number 4. So number 3, I have Western African animism and spirituality, and number 4, I have Western atheism with or without some syncretism flavor. All right. So let me start from number 4 and then I'll explain number 3. So number 4 is Western atheism. Let me explain that first. The reason I say Western atheism and not just atheism is because of my experience and from what I have read, looking at the difference between atheism as it is talked about and practiced in the West versus atheism as it is understood in the East. So in the East, I'm talking about places like China, some part of Russia, maybe, places like that, the Philippines or, stuff like that. The Eastern hemisphere of the world, let's put it like that. In the West, when someone says he is atheist, the person usually means that he believes that there is no God, right? He believes that there is no God or spiritual realities in general. Very important choice of words are used. This person believes that there is no God. So he has faith that God does not exist. This is a type of religion because this religion depends on faith. Now, these people do not have proof that God doesn't exist. And of course, they also don't have proof that God exists because there is no physical proof that God exists. You require faith, right? But even without proof, they still believe that there is no God. Okay? Which is different from the Eastern atheism. In Eastern atheism, people who are atheists, or most people who call themselves atheists, have no opinion or religious worldview, right? When it comes to God and spiritual things. They have no religious worldview, no religious opinion, none of that. Okay, and that's very different. If you still don't understand it, let me give you a very simple example. Let's assume that I told you that in Barbados, there is a compound. If you go up the northern parts of Barbados, around Speightstown, there is a very big compound. It's like as big as 2 football fields. And they have about 30 to 40 ostriches there, live ostriches. And once a week, every Friday, these ostriches are raced like horses. They'll put them in an ostrich race and people can bet on it and win big prizes. If I give you that information, there are generally 3 positions that you can have. One of them is that you can say, oh, I have heard about this from many people in Barbados, so I believe that it exists, and therefore for me it exists. I believe it. That is the first position you can have, a believer. The second position you can have is maybe you tell me, oh, I am a botanist, or I deal with law enforcement, or I know credible people who are in botany or law enforcement or forestry or wildlife reserve. And if anything like this existed, I would have learned it from them. In fact, they have emphatically told me that such a place doesn't exist, right? So I believe it doesn't exist. So first of all, I said there are people who believe it exists and other people who believe it doesn't exist. But for the majority of you who are just hearing this for the first time, you have not had time to form a belief around it. So you're thinking, seriously, such a place exists? Like, I don't know. So for you, you don't believe it exists, but you don't also believe it doesn't exist. You're still waiting to get more information to see if it exists or it doesn't exist. And that is the position that many people who call themselves atheists in the East, that is the position that they hold. They usually are just hearing about this whole spiritual Jesus God thing. And so they haven't had time to investigate the matter and to form a religious belief and a religious worldview, right? That is very different from somebody who has said, I believe that this religious worldview is false, okay? And that is why when you encounter Western atheism, it's usually argumentative in the same way that most established religions are argumentative. Because if you talk to a Christian about the existence of Jesus or God, he's going to try to defend his position. if you talk to a Western atheist about his position or on Jesus or God, he's also going to try to defend his position, like someone who has a religion. But if you talk to Eastern atheists, they usually are just going to be observing because they haven't formed a worldview. So you're just going to find honest questions and they're not defending any position per se. So in Barbados, there are people who practice Western type of atheism, which is actually a belief system that says that there is no God or spiritual reality. In the West, when somebody has a position where he still hasn't formed a worldview or a religious worldview as regards Jesus, God, spirits, or whatever, angels, that person is usually going to call himself an agnostic, not an atheist. He's usually going to call himself an agnostic. So in Barbados, there are quite a number of people that have Western atheism, but not by itself. That's the point I'm coming to. Not by itself. This is usually mixed or flavored or marinated with animism or Eastern spirituality, some type of Eastern spirituality. So these people will they don't believe in God or Jesus or all this hell, heaven stuff, but they believe in karma. They believe in the law of attraction. They believe in the evil eye. They believe in, reincarnation. Some of them believe in reincarnation. Some of them believe in spiritual healing, right? So they have this, when it comes to Jesus, God, angels, as it is generally understood in traditional Christian religion, we don't believe that. But when it comes to things that, are also from certain faiths, we believe that. They believe that the Bible is a general good book, but they don't believe it's the word of God or it's historically accurate or it is truth in the sense that a Christian will believe it is truth, right? So this is the type of Western atheism you're usually going to find in the Caribbean. And the reason is many Caribbean people cannot abandon religion entirely, given that the country has a very strong history of religion, very ancient history with religion, right? So it's difficult for modern generation to abandon religion entirely, even when they want to, even when they're influenced by the West, even when they are trying to seek out new religions. It's very difficult for them to abandon it entirely. And that is why you see this kind of mix. And that is the fourth one. That's the Western atheism. The third one that I was talking about is Western African animism and spirituality. Again, I have to put Western, because if you're just talking about African animism and spirituality, and let's bring it down to the one I have more experience with, which is Nigerian, you're going to see that there's a lot of animal sacrifices, there's a lot of charms and rituals and potions that go involved, incantations, chants, and all of that. But all of those things are they require a lot of dedication. They take a lot of time. They require a lot of ceremonies and processes. And many people in the West don't want to do all of that. All they want to do is be associated with the African animism. And so you see them picking up a few things like, okay, maybe they are going to start using a particular leaf to wash their clothes or to take a bath because they believe that these leaves ground them to the earth. Maybe you see them wearing certain types of clothes. Maybe you see them honoring certain spirits from Africa like Ogun, Shango, Amadioha. All of this, the Mami Wata, all of them are going to start worshipping them. But why this is very, very different from normal African animism and spirituality is because with African animism and spirituality, there are only two positions. The first position is one that understands that these things are actually demonic and satanic, And messing with them will get you involved in sinful activities and demonic activities. That is the first position for the people who don't practice it. The second position for the people who practice it is the understanding that these are serious rituals that involve real entities, spiritual entities, and you cannot mess with them, because even though you want to gain certain advantages from them, these spirits demand worship. So you can't just use them as toys or as debate materials. When you're having a debate with your friend, you start mentioning all these spirits and you start doing certain practices that involve these spirits, right? People in Africa understand that these are real entities, spiritual entities. So you have only two options. You either have to admit that you are subjecting yourself to them so that you can gain certain things, whether it is power, money, influence, wealth, whatever, relationships or whatever, or you realize that after getting all these things that they apparently have to offer you, you are damning your soul. Many times they are going to trick you. They are going to lie to you. So you don't even get the things that you thought you were going to get from them. And the people who have this worldview leave the African animism entirely and either become Christians or whatever other religion they feel does not involve very dangerous spirits. In Barbados and in a large part of the Black American community, especially in the United States specifically, you see people who want all the, what they call the benefits of the African animism and spirituality, but don't want to admit that they are dealing with real dangerous spiritual entities. And that is the problem. So you want all the benefits, you want all the way it looks, the glam, the whatever, but you don't want to admit that there are certain entities that you're dealing with. And so this religion is devoid of all the spiritual practices and is devoid of all the everything else that makes it look like the African animism and spirituality. So it's like it has created its own brand of religion that is inconsistent with both the ideology of Western atheism and the ideology of African animism, right? So this is a unique something that I've seen. And the first time I encountered it is when I moved to the Caribbean, right? When I moved to the Caribbean, I saw people handling dangerous matters without realizing or admitting that the things they were doing relate to real entities, which makes no sense. And there was a time I had a conversation with somebody, and the person was saying, "Oh, you are from Africa, and you abandoned your religion, and you abandoned your own faith, and you're picking the white man's religion and all of that." And I was like, "No, I'm a Christian." And then he said, "Yes, Christianity is the white man's religion." I said, "Actually, no. Christianity started from the Middle East and it came to Africa before it went to Europe, right? So we actually had Christianity before the white man had Christianity. The white man was very influential in spreading Christianity to all of Africa, or I should say most of Africa. But the white man didn't bring Christianity into Africa the first time. In fact, it was people in Africa that took Christianity to Europe for the first time and to North America for the first time. So when I say I'm a Christian, it's not a white man's religion. Secondly, even if it is a white man, and this is my stance on Christianity, even if it is a white man's religion, why should we throw away only Christianity? Why don't we throw away everything else, right? Most of the technology we use today were white man's inventions. I mean, you're listening to this on YouTube. YouTube was invented by two white guys, right? Internet, YouTube, many of the phones that we use, many of the appliances in our homes, our laptops, many of these things were invented by white men. Right? So if we're only going to use the things that were invented by people of our same pigmentation, how many things are we going to use in this world? Right? Why you just throw it away religion? Why don't you throw away everything else? and secondly, why is the color of the person's skin who invented something significant to black people? That is another thing I don't understand. Because one of the most influential people in this whole racism movement thing was Martin Luther King Jr. And in his I Have a Dream speech, he said, and I quote, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." These were the words of Martin Luther King Jr. himself. So it's very funny that a few years later, and in fact, Martin Luther King Jr.'s children are still alive, right? So it's very funny that a few years later, the black people that he was fighting for them not to be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, are now the ones judging the white people by the color of their skin and not the content of their character. It doesn't make sense. It also doesn't make sense that a lot of the generalization that is done against white people isn't because of anything that the white people themselves did. It is because of things that their ancestors and their forefathers did, right? So if we're going to judge everyone by the things that their ancestors did, then why are we not also judging Africans and many black people for selling their brothers and sisters as slaves? Because a lot of the transatlantic slave trade wasn't by force. The white man didn't come and carry the black man by force. No. The white man did a deal with the black man. And he said, "Sell me your servants. Sell me your brother. Sell me your brother's wife. Sell me your nephew. And I will pay you." Sometimes it was ridiculous. They were giving them ceramic plates. They were giving them chinaware. They were giving them mirrors, farming utensils, cutlasses and hoes. And they were selling human beings. Sometimes a single ceramic plate could buy you as many as 50 human slaves. Right? So if we're going to judge white people, where is the judgment for black people? Where is the judgment for everyone? This is the position I have when people start talking about, oh, you have the white man religion and you whitewashed and you white. No, brother, you have a wrong understanding of history. If you understood history, you will understand the need for God's grace, because you will immediately realize that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. White, black, yellow, purple, indigo, green, I don't care the color of your skin. You have done something very horrendous, whether in this lifetime or if we're judging you by the actions of your ancestors, which apparently is a reasonable metric to judge people in today's social media world, which makes no sense to me. But that is by the way. So let me summarize. The first 4 are political religion, which is very interesting to me. Well, these are people that throw away all religion and all belief systems and put the highest good as political affiliation. The second one is Christian syncretism. These are people that are at least 50 to 55% Christian, but then they pick and choose whatever in the Christian belief that they want to apply to themselves at any point in time, or not apply to themselves at any other point in time. Yeah, that's something else I didn't talk about. There are people who actually go in and out of believing certain things. Like 1 minute they tell you, oh, it was a miracle and it's like an angel came and touched them and they were healed. And in another minute, they are saying all those things don't happen. All that is stupidness, because you can't expect angels to just come and be healing you when you have to go hospital and take medication. So on one hand, they believe you don't need to take medication and the Holy Spirit and angels can just come and heal you. On the other hand, they want you to take medications because the Holy Spirit and angels cannot heal you, right? So those are two very opposite beliefs, but you can hear them from the same person's mouth in Barbados, okay? So the third one, like I said, is Western African animism and spirituality, which is like African animism and spirituality in name, just the name. But the ceremonies, the rituals, the practices, many of them are removed, and people expect to just have the benefits and none of the and have none of the devotion, do none of the requirements. And they talk about it and they feel grounded to earth and going back to Mother Nature and all of that stuff. Number 4 is Western atheism. Now, Western atheism is a belief system that says that there is no God and no spiritual reality. It is not simply somebody saying, oh, I don't know, or I haven't studied this. No, it is usually, I have a belief system that Jesus, God, traditional Christian religion is not true. It doesn't exist. These people, however, will also include things like Eastern spirituality. So like I already talked about, things like law of attraction, things like karma, things like yoga, things like, I don't know, a whole bunch of other stuff that they may even, this is something else. So there's this interesting form of syncretism that I've seen that combines Christianity with Western atheism with Eastern spirituality. So they'll tell you that when a family member dies, they go to a better place. So they're borrowing the theory of heaven from Christianity. And the interesting thing is that family members, this is something else that I need to say about Caribbean Christianity. Family members that die only go to heaven. Like, I've attended so many funerals, and once the funeral starts, the preacher or whoever is doing the eulogy will say, we thank God because our brother is in a better place. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, how do you know? Does somebody have direct channel to the judgment seat in heaven where they are broadcasting in 4K HD what is happening to these people's souls after they're dead? How does that happen? And you see, they just say so many good things about, and this is for everybody, by the way. Somebody has been the community drunkard, right? This guy drinks every day. Nobody has seen him sober since 2011. He has only been drinking. He does not drink liquid water. He only drinks rum and rum punch. These are the only things he has done. He is very notorious as being a nuisance. He's always harassing people, always coming up to people's face and talking in their nose with his alcohol breath. This guy is a nuisance. Never goes to church. Never does anything. He develops liver cirrhosis. He is admitted in the hospital, and then after a week or two, he dies. Right? So this is, by the time he got to the hospital to actually get tested, it was very severe, like very, very severe. And he was practically dying. And then 2 weeks later, he's dead. At his funeral, he's a saint. Like, he was the best person, and it was so good, and the impact he had on society, and he was really, and I'm wondering, why is it that everybody that attended this funeral had at least one horrible story about this guy, but everything they are saying from the pulpit is a complete lie, completely different from everything that they were saying in the pews or outside the church? What happens? Anyway, that's another story. If somebody understands what happens there, I want the person to explain in the comment section. But back to what I was saying. So your family member is going to die. And then when a family member dies in the Caribbean, they combine it. They tell you something like, oh, she's in a better place. She's in a better place. And she has become an angel that is watching over you. And now whenever you're in trouble, just know that your mother is out there looking after you. And I'm thinking in my head, so we have the heaven from Christianity, I assume, and the angel from Christianity, but we don't have judgment, right? So we've taken that one out, because if there is going to be judgment, then you're not sure whether or not this individual is in heaven, right? And if you're Catholic or if you're Anglican, you pray for the person's soul, right? But you're not sure. You just hope and you pray to God that maybe at the moment of their death, they repented. Maybe somebody met them and they confessed their sins and they gave their life to Christ before they died. You're hoping, you're praying, God, let there have been a way. But in the Caribbean, many of these people, the people I'm referring to now, which is the Western atheism with a mix of other religions, just believe that once you die and I liked you, this is something else. If I like you, you're in heaven. Because I have seen these people talk about people they didn't like. And many times when the thing gets really heated, they'll say, oh, just go to hell. And I'm like, oh, hell exists. But hell exists only for people you don't like, right? And it in some cases also, it might just be a statement like, oh, just go to hell doesn't mean actually go to a physical fiery furnace in the spiritual realm. No, it's just a saying for them to tell you how angry they are. But then also, this family member that has passed on, that is now an angel, the person is no more a human being. The person has gained a new physical identity as an angel, can now protect you. And like in some Asian religions, you can burn incense to your ancestors and have them protect you. So you see, when you meet somebody in the Caribbean, there are very few assumptions you can make regarding their religious beliefs or beliefs in general, There are very, very few assumptions that you can make, because these people could be the political religion and you meet them during election. Oh God, you have no clue what to expect, right? Or it could be Christian syncretism. It could be Western African animism and spirituality. It could be Western atheism with or without a bit of Eastern spirituality. So you could have things like Eastern animism or Eastern Hinduism or Buddhism, or you could even have Western atheism mixed with political religion. You could have all of these things at the same time, or you could have none of them. There are people who just don't engage religiously. They don't engage religiously or politically. They just don't engage. So they wake up in the morning, they get dressed, they go to work, they come back home, they sit down and they enjoy TV, right? They hang out, they drink rum punch, and rum punch, by the way, is a very interesting drink in the Caribbean, especially in Barbados. Because I feel like because it was invented here, it is the most accessible drink. And so anytime you ask somebody, like, what drink are you having? There's an 80% or a 70% chance that the person is going to say rum punch. If it's in a gathering, right? If it's in a cookout like a barbecue or an outdoor gathering, it's usually rum punch that you're going to see there. Sometimes there are unique brand names that come up, but I find rum punch to be one of the usual suspects in these gatherings. But anyway, these people are just going to have a little bit of rum punch, not enough to get themselves drunk because they need their brains to go back to work the next day and make some more money, and they just want to have fun. That's just their religious viewpoint. I'm not going to bother about heaven or hell or whatever. There are people that believe that is their business. My grandmother believes that. Okay, if she wants to go to church, I will drive her in my car to her church. I will drop her there and I will come back home. After church, I will go and pick her up and bring her back home, right? When I'm at grandma's house, if she wants to say grace before meal, I say grace before meal. But it's just to make grandma happy and just to not put up a fight, right? I don't discuss these matters. That is how many people in the Caribbean also are. So you might encounter one of those people, and how to know that you have seen one of those people is that, because usually, I mean, like many of the circles I'm in, they are usually Christians. But if you find out that one of these people, how you know that the people who just don't want to engage are the ones that you're looking at, is that when a religious topic comes up, they just have no input, like zero. So you don't know, does this person believe a certain thing? Does he not believe? Is he one of the people who doesn't want to engage? Is he atheist? Is he agnostic? There's no way to know. And you can't push. That's something else I realized. You can't push it. You can't ask more questions because there is just zero input. Okay? So, if you were thinking based on statistics that Christianity is the most dominant religion in the Caribbean, statistically, you would be right. Realistically, you will see Christianity. Yes, you will see Christianity. But it will have so many children and grandchildren who are unrecognizable from Christianity, except that they all just share the name Christian, right? Both the Christian that believes that there is no hell, to the Christian that believes that who you support politically is more important than faith, to the Christian that believes that Christianity itself, as it is understood as God and Jesus and everything, is not real, but some part of the Bible is real and the other part is not real, and every other thing that is not in the Bible and not compatible with Christianity is also real, and so on and so forth. Many of those things are going to be classified under Christianity, because these people, when they are filling out books, official documents, right, they're just going to check off Christianity. Because how do you start? It's just a form, right? If there's a census, the people are just passing around the form with religion, and everything has to fit into one word: Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism or everything has to be one word. So that is not the best place, or it doesn't present an opportunity for somebody to write 10 paragraphs about what he believes, right? So you will usually just see everybody just check Christianity. Like most people who believe all this other stuff will just check Christian, because it's significantly easier to do that, right? And many of them will go to church. Some of them won't go to church, but if they ever want to be at a religious event, it will be at a Christian religious event. So they will call themselves Christians as well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my experience with religions in Barbados. So, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Without further ado, I'm signing off. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. No videos for you on Sunday. Spend time with your family members. Spend time with your family members. How many times will I spend? Oh my goodness. Call your mother, call your father, call your siblings. Spend time with them. eat food. Okay, I already said bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.